Yeah, no
over
worries.
our compliance, and that is where our site development work lives. We put this presentation together today as a result of a conversation we had with Justin Woods on behalf of DRAG. Who approached us and had some concerns and questions about Title 10 and erosion control, sediment control, and it just really created a good discussion. And we started looking at ways we could change some of our processes. Our goal is to work with you as contractors to help you accomplish your job as C. So this is a training session we put together today. We may have an additional one. Part of what Jeremy and Mike are going to present today will be an overview of Title 10 requirements, which kind of explains why we do what we do and what it is we're doing. Also, some of the recent changes within BDS and why all of this seems and feels very new and different. Also, go over some of the new changes and proposals that our team is making that we hope will make life a little bit easier for you as a contractor. And most importantly, at the end of this presentation, have a time set aside so we can have a dialogue, answer questions, hear suggestions and ideas from you so we can continue to improve our processes and our programs. There's a sign-in sheet at the back, so if you didn't sign in, if you would please do so before you leave. And at this point, we'll turn it over to Jeremy Russell, our Senior Site Development Inspector.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. And thanks to the director and DRAG for helping this process get along. So Jeremy Russell, Senior Site Development Inspector. I've been doing erosion sediment control for over 13 years now, 4 municipalities in a regulatory setting. So we're going to jump right in. There's not a lot of filler. We got a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So erosion and sediment control, one of the main things that we're talking about is impact from raindrops being exposed soil. It shows the process when that happens, those soil particles become attached. Some of the earliest erosion control work began back in 1912. So we're 100 years into these types of regulations and working on projects. The Missouri River, 1928 was when one of the first documents was created that helped Roosevelt make the New Deal program on SES. So just want to put this as a background. This has been going on for a long time, centuries, you know. So, by the United States, good 100 years. Are these requirements new? No. 1912, 1917, early documented projects. 1928, Soil Erosion and National Menace was published. Federal Water Pollution Control Act was in 1948. National Environmental Policy Act, which was NEPA, came in 1970. And then that formed into the Clean Water Act, which is what we still have in place today. The Nationwide Urban Runoff Program is really the key document that a lot of studies happen. People all over the United States, Oregon, Washington was part of those studies back in 79 to 83. So what they really looked at then was what is the effects of construction on stormwater. So that document, if you ever get a chance to read it, most people probably aren't going to follow that. So City of Portland's Phase 1 permit came out in 1995. That was the first term of these regulations were put in place. In 2000, the City of Portland put in their erosion control requirements. And the reason for that space and time, that space there, is the original permits really concentrated on industrial activities. And the new permits that came out, that's when they started putting in erosion control and for construction. So you can see that timeline. Almost where we stand today, we're over 100 years in. So we love acronyms in this type of work. So just kind of put this out there for everybody to follow along. Clean Water Act, the NPDES is our permit. It's the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which is promulgated by the EPA. MS4 is Municipal Separate Sewer System. These are pipes that go directly out to waterways or streams, creeks that don't get processed prior to discharge to the waterway. The ESCM is the Erosion Sediment Control Manual. So we'll skip the Stormwater Management Plan. Stormwater Management Plan is the guiding document for us internally within the city as to what we have to do to meet our EPA permit requirements. So we get our permit, we create this plan, and we say this is what we're going to do, EPA, DEQ, to make sure that we're meeting these requirements and we don't have any degradation of our water and soil. So then the erosion sediment control manual is our internal document that's basically our administrative rule that tells us what we have, tells everybody, us and the contractors, what we have to do, how to do it, provides details, and provides some background. We're working on rewriting this manual, so anybody that's interested in being engaged in that process, we're going to start that probably later this year. It'll take a while too. We definitely encourage you to get involved. So my card is at the back and let us know. The ESCP is Erosion and Sediment Control Plan. This is what you have on your site that says these are the BMPs we're going to put in place. It's site-specific every time. We have an alternate here with the City of Portland for small sites, which is what we're concentrating on today. It's the simple site. So, and BMP is best management practice. These are your silt fences, your catch basin inserts, and your bio bags, items like that. So why does it seem like these are new requirements? In 2015, BDS began taking steps to ensure that the concerns were identified during our EPA audit that happened in 2013. So there was a lot of things on there. Some of those things pertain directly to how we are doing as a program in the construction community. And some of those things were internal, some of those things were external. So we're starting to take steps. One major step was, and it's been a major improvement from our end, we've hired staff who specifically specialize in erosion sediment control for construction activity alone. There's a broad range of erosion control. You've got deep soils, which is our geotechnical engineers. You've got stormwater quality people, but these, our team now, we're concentrating specifically on construction activity. We're trained, certified for that kind of work. Erosion sediment control inspections for commercial and residential development permits are now performed by us. There's not a bundled inspection. They're not using combo inspectors. We are doing all those inspections. That's been a major change, and that's been somewhat of what's caused some of the confusion about what's going on. Specialized inspectors are more capable of providing education, which is the number one key to what we do, is education, letting you know why we have to do this, what to do, and what problems can arise from not doing it. We identify compliance issues ahead of time, we try to, and we're performing enforcement as needed. So our administrative structure for this whole thing, EPA requires municipalities to obtain an NPDES permit. We are a phase 1 community because we're over 100,000 people. EPA Oregon DEQ administers our MS4 permit. Portland Bureau of Environmental Services maintains that permit. So everything we're doing here is actually driven by BES, Environmental Services. They write that stormwater management plan and they make sure everything is going well with it. Different Portland bureaus are designated to perform what we call minimum control measures. Over here at BDS, it's the ND1 is new development, or Title 10. So that's our area of control. Title 10 requirements also apply to other things outside of construction, but for BDS, it's permitted activity. BDS reports compliance information every year back to BDS, and then they submit an annual report to DEQ and EPA. They review that report to see if what we're doing is in compliance. EPA conducts audits. Our last audit was in 2013, and we got the final report in 2015. So when they do that audit, they look at everything for this program. It's not just concentrated on construction, it's concentrated on TMDLs for our waterways, but what are we doing for response on spills. So there's a lot of moving parts to these permits. Our last audit identified several areas of concern with Title 10 enforcement and administration. This is just a quick, just a visual breakdown of what we see, how these permits work. The Clean Water Act into the NPDES permits, then our stormwater management plan, our Title 10, our erosion and sediment control manual, which breaks down to your erosion and sediment control plan. Our guiding documents is number 1, our NPDES phase 1 permit, our stormwater management plan, again, Title 10, erosion and sediment control manual, and our erosion control illustrations, which are available on our website. So all of these, when this is posted online, I'll leave a direct link. Click on these and so the main purpose of Title 10 is to reduce the sediment and pollutants, not just sediment, we're not just talking about soil, so and pollutants contained in erosion caused by construction and development. Our pollutants of concern mainly are sediment, gross solids, and chemical pollutants. Sediment is typically considered a surrogate pollutant because everything binds to that dirt. Whenever you have a spill, what do most people do? Put some dirt on it, a little bit of oil, get glitter. It's good for that because it soaks up everything. So on construction sites, every time you drive a piece of equipment or have a leak that goes over the top of your soil, those chemicals and those compounds, hydrocarbons, solvents, they all bind to that soil. What we don't want is that soil washing off the site and then those compounds coming out in the water. So what are we protecting? Our soils and our waterways. Those are our two main concerns. Portland is broken up into several different watersheds. That's 5. Anywhere you're working in Portland, that's why these requirements are everywhere. There's no areas that are outside of the control of Title 10. What are we protecting? Our main nexus is the stormwater runoff that's coming off of these projects. What's running down the curb lines of these projects. That's our main concern. You can see erosion and sediments as just one little item in this whole group of things. Sheet erosion and gully erosion, just an illustration of how this happens. Raindrops hit the soil particles, they separate those particles. Channels are made by concentration of runoff, and then large particles, large rills begin to happen. Wind erosion as well, not just from stormwater, but wind. And this is pretty much the sedimentation process, just simple graphic. So water hits the soil becomes detached, begins to be transported downhill, and then deposition occurs when those waters become calm enough for everything to fall out. There's a difference between erosion controls and sediment controls. That's one of the main things we want to make sure that everybody's understanding. Erosion controls are protecting the top of that soil so when the water hits it, you don't have that detachment. Sediment controls is stopping that sediment that has become detached before it leaves the project. So big difference, and so we just use that term erosion control pretty lightly and throw it around. From NERC, we had a lot of information that came out from that study, and they found that areas under development are 4 times more sediment will come off this project. That's why construction activity is a concern. That even beats out bare agriculture. You can have this in a field, no cover crops. So let's take a breath for a second. That's just our background information, and then we're going to get into the meat of what we're actually doing here. So far, any questions about the structure? EPA, TEQ, EDS, and it's pretty clear. All right, so Title 10 applies to all ground disturbing activities in the city, whether or not a permit is required. So we have compliance, our compliance division. If there's a erosion concern happening at a site, a house, we cover that under Title 10. It's not just for construction. The only exemptions we have for Title 10 are installation of signs and emergencies. That's it. There's no other instance where you're not required to comply with Title 10. So planning and permitting, just real quick, just going over when you bring in your plans for your project. Responsibility is on the engineer to bring in a set of plans that complies with our erosion control manual and our requirements. Disturbance area is 500 square feet or greater. You may be required to bring in an actual erosion control plan. The disturbance area on special sites, if you're at a special area that has an environmental zone, anything like that, then could trigger a plan. The erosion sediment control plan is not required for work that does not require a permit for tree plantings or other vegetation. Handheld tools, no mechanical digging. And where a plan is required, the responsible party shall not commence any development before the director has approved the proposed plan. So working before you actually have a permit in hand, that's what that's talking about. So a typical erosion control plan, you can see your standard details: construction entrance, sediment fence, inserts. These are your the trinity of erosion control. So all sites that aren't meeting the simple criteria have to turn in a form or actual plan. Simple site form is what we're really here to talk about today. When does it apply? It's for flat lots with less than 10% slope before development, more than 50 feet away from a wetland or water body, outside an environmental or greenway zone, less than 10,000 square feet of disturbance, and not a land division. This form does not exempt from any requirements of Title 10. It's just giving you the ability to say, we don't really need a full plan. We don't need an engineer to draw everything out. This is very simple. So you sign that form that says we promise to follow these basic regulations. For BDS, our three inspections that we do for erosion sediment controls are number 200 inspection, which is before you begin any ground disturbing activity. We come out, we make sure all your BMPs are in place and they're installed properly, give you the go-ahead to start running, start digging, start grading, then you start working with the building inspection side. Our 205 interim inspection is a compliance inspection. We want to make sure everything's going right on the site. This is part of what we have to do for our APA permits. Not just you start off right, but all the way through the project. There's no pollution concerns going on there. It can be requested by a contractor for consultation. If you just don't know what to do or you have questions about where you're at in the project, you can call in 205. Our inspectors will come out and help walk you along through that. They can also be scheduled by us as a compliance check. If we drive by, if we have to be en route to different sites and we see that there's an issue at a site, we will come back and schedule a 205 in our system. And we are working on making sure that we're contacting the contractor, saying we saw we have a problem, we're going to be on your site tomorrow, just want to give you a heads up.
Can you call a 205 more than once if you want?
Yeah, 205s never get closed out, so if you're looking on Portland maps and you see there's a 205 and it says partially approved, that's because we never completely approve that. It's meant to stay open throughout the whole process. So the 210 is our permanent measures. That's scheduled by the contractor on the site. All of the site work is completed. It means your landscaping, your seeding, your hardscape, your trees, everything's cleaned up, and all your BMPs are removed. That's your final inspection before you call in your 999 building inspection. So something that's been tripping a lot of people up with the tree requirements and the 200 is this 507 tree preservation inspection. We would like these things to be called in, and they should be called in before you install your erosion control. We've seen things happen where you put in your plans, per your plan, you put in your sediment fence, but it's going right through your tree protection area and you've done a trench. We don't want that to happen. That's why we're asking people to follow this process, because if you do that, then we can make some changes, whatever's needed. So if you have tree protection requirements on your plan, make sure you call that in first. And this is one of the new changes. Number 200s are no longer bundled with setbacks, footings, and foundations. You've got to get this thing called in before you ever start digging or grading. That do not begin without us giving the approval for that 200. What are we inspecting? And this sheet, the handouts that we gave are kind of it's one of them is an actual inspection logbook, and the other one is kind of help you prepare for your 200, have a successful inspection. So we're looking at only grading and excavation necessary to install the sediment controls has been completed before we get there. No other grading and excavation has occurred on site. We're making sure approved plans are available. We're making sure that the erosion concerns hotline sign is posted. With the permit number, it doesn't do us a lot of good to have an empty sign out there. The reason for the erosion control hotline sign is so that if somebody comes by and has a question about that project or sees a problem, it gets routed to the right people. We don't want everything being blown up and sent out to the director's office or to BDS as a discharge. We want those to come to us so we can come out, see what the problem is, evaluate it, and provide compliance guidance. That's the reason for that sign. We want to make sure your stabilized exit is installed, perimeter sediment controls are installed, downstream catch basins are protected, and any overlay and protection zones are delineated. So again, checklist, everybody gets one. This is something that we've recently done. We're hoping to get these out with your permits so that whenever you get your permit, you can look at this thing and say, what do I need to do to make sure that we have an approved 200 inspection? If you follow these for each one of these inspections, you should not have any problems. So, again, back to the plan. And erosion concerns hotline sign. So your approved plans are on site, your hotline sign is posted. You should have no visible activity. And now we're going to get into the actual BMPs and the whys and hows of that. So stabilized exits. We can see why we need stabilized exits. This is kind of interesting because we actually had asphalt and concrete going up into the site, but whenever big trucks come out and you hit those parts of that right of way, it's going to cause disturbance. So stabilized exits are important to keep track out from coming off your site. This is a pretty good stabilized exit. I've got one issue with this exit, but this should be the first BMP installed. You drive in, you drop off your staging equipment, and then you start putting in that exit. That way, whenever you start to haul off that soil, you've got something in place to get the dirt off the tires of those vehicles, and we don't have track out. The problem I have with this is we've got an extremely steep slope. on an exit. We should have some breaks in here. But this is a pretty good, this is a larger site, 3-inch rock, geotextile fabric underneath at the bottom. We keep sediment from pumping back up through the rock. So let's look at the requirements. It shall be clean rock. We're not going to accept road base. We're not going to accept anything that has fines. It needs to be at least 1.5 inches clean rock. Alternatives. This has been really good for a lot of residential sites where you don't have room to get that big rock in there, or you're going to be phasing where that rock may interfere with some of your utilities going in. These track mats, and there's a lot of companies that make them, they can be laid out. What they do have is some bamboo shoots that come through and they shake that truck as they come across. That material picks up that sediment and keeps it in place. So these are actually pretty cheap. I think they're around $200 a piece. But if you think about it, you can take this to your next site, pull it up, throw it in the back of your truck, and you can do that all day if you're just hitting site after site. So this has been really good for a lot of projects. It does not handle track equipment well, so don't let anybody drive an excavator across it. But it does do great for large trucks and the small amount of activity on residential sites. Again, pressure rock road base is not acceptable. You can see what happens. It just gets all the fines get pounded in. It all ends up out at the right of way. This is what we don't want. So, perimeter sediment controls. Perimeter controls are not water treatment filters. We need to remember that. They function as sediment control dams that allows that sedimentation process to occur as soon as that water hits the, it gives it time to settle out. It doesn't clear up your water. It will not provide filtration. So, upslope stabilization and other erosion control DMPs are required with your sediment fence or your perimeter controls, and proper installation and continual maintenance are key. You can't say that this is not like a 2x4 we're putting in a building. You can't say once it's in, it's going to be great forever. These things wear out. It's geotextile fabric. Wind and weather takes its toll on it. So let's look at that detail. This is something we've been having some issues with in the field. Use stitch loop material. If you're going to Home Depot or somewhere like that, you're going to find staple products. We will not accept those staple products. Our standard is this material. So stitch loops, 2x2 posts. Everything should be towed in, and it should be trenched in a minimum of 6 inches. There's a little line at the bottom of that silt fence. That's what it's for. It tells you how deep to bury it. So this is a good example of what we want to see. This is the material. So this is what the stitch loop is. For sediment fence, an important thing is to turn the ends up. We should not have straight sediment fences. It works as a dam. You need to hold that water in. You don't want to let it run down that side of the fence and then come out of the project. That's not what we're looking for. So turning up the ends of your sediment fence, very important. How you abut these sections are very important as well. We don't allow bypassing, so make sure we follow this, put them together, give them a twist or two, get them staked in. Here's a good example of a nice installation. You can see we have complete coverage for this whole area. So if water starts to build up, we're not spilling back over. You can see that it's trenched in well, we've got the right material and the right stakes. This is what happens whenever you don't adjoin correctly. We've got an area where that can bypass. We've got areas where it'll pull apart. Make sure you're trenching it in. This is no longer going to be accepted if we come out and it's like this. You're going to fail that inspection based on that. The trenching should make this little J-hook. You do this trench, just going straight in. It allows water to cut up under it. I like to think of these kind of like a toe wall. If you've ever built drainage structures, it kind of works as a toe wall. It doesn't allow it to go up underneath that. All right, so is this going to work? Yeah. So this is what we've been seeing for a while. That is not ever an acceptable practice. I think a lot of us know that, but this is exactly what we don't want to see. It doesn't do. I mean, it's pretty clear that is not going to work as a sediment dam. So it's just going to run right up underneath. Straw wattles are a good practice, and we encourage the use of these on small flat sites because they're easy to replace, easy to install, easy to maintain. That can cut your labor costs. I mean, on sediment fence, you're having to trench, install, pack, stakes. It's always getting knocked down every time somebody makes a delivery. You know, people throw their 2x4s on top of it, or people like to step on it. Straw wattles, you don't really have that issue. They will get destroyed, but it's a lot easier to replace and maintain. So what we really just want to make sure on straw wattles, if we're using those, they do still need a little bit of a trench to set in. You know, just a hand shovel, go through, trench them in, put a little bit of backfill on it. We don't want anything going up underneath them. And make sure they're staked in. The staking on this doesn't really meet our requirements, but it does meet the intent of how straw wattles are supposed to work. So
is that an either or thing, or is it just all the suspenders?
it's an either or thing for flat sides. So if you look at this side, we've got a bit of a slope. So what they're using here is just an extra piece of protection. And a lot of times people don't want to maintain this, and they'll go out to this wall here. This disturbance could have occurred after they did that. So a lot of times on our projects, we get disturbance that happens in that little parking strip or the planter strip. This may be something you want to do. You may have some fence there and then another wall down at the end. So, catch basin protection, also known as witch's hats. So filter bags and socks, they need to be replaced. This is a requirement. We never accept just bio bags, and that's been in practice here for a long time. But it doesn't meet the intent or what is supposed to be done. Those bio bags are only going to provide a filtration for the larger particles and stop them from getting into your catch basin. What that bag does is actually give you a filtration, holds that down, lets it go through there. So always look for these. They have to be replaced every 3 months. So whenever you're bidding jobs, make sure you keep that in mind. How long is your project going to go on? Make sure you're putting in replacement. We hear that a lot, that erosion control isn't really being thought about at that bidding process. They're bidding one catch basin, they're building one row of silt fence, they're bidding one straw wall. And that's what makes it hard for people to really keep up on their erosion control, because you already have a set budget. So think about that on the onset of the project. Where are we at on this? So it's an inlet insert shall be used with upslope BMPs. It's not a dustpan. It's for incidental or accidental discharges. It's your last point of protection before you have a discharge that affects our system. So here's our actual detail. This is from the erosion control manual. This was confusing a lot of people, and I hope that we get this cleared up and changed a little bit in our new manual. So you look at this and you think that it's just biobags, and that's what it looks like to me. It's very confusing. So biobags upstream are a sediment attenuation. You can see it allows those larger particles to settle out there, but we need this catch basin insert here. You can use these are not required. You don't have to have inserts in biobags, and in a lot of places we encourage you not to put them in bike lanes. We've got to think about everybody that's using the roadways when we use these types of things. That's why inserts are pretty good. Parking, and anybody that's used these know that people will drive over these and will get busted daily. So if you have that type of situation going on, you don't have to have those bio bags in. Just mark down in your logbook why you can't have them. They're getting busted every day. We're having to spend, extra $500 on bio bags. It doesn't make sense. So, but always have that insert in. Inserts in action, turbine discharge. Go in and get the filter. You can see that these things will start to fill up. That's how they work. So, when you're maintenance, when you're doing your inspections, if it becomes 1/3 full in that witch hat area, that's when you want to clean it out for you. So installation of bio bags. Here's an installation of a catch basin insert. Notice that we're not having this long piece flopped over on top of that catch basin grate. We don't want that. That's just going to cause things to pond up and cause some possibly dangerous situations for vehicles and bicycles. So make sure you're clear and you're trimming that stuff up if you have an extra long section. This one has the bio bags and inserted. You can't really see the insert. And curb inlets. Don't forget about your curb inlets. Those have to be protected as well. Failure to maintain. You can see this has been out there for well over 3 months. This could probably be considered a stormwater planner at this point. We've got so much organic material. It works like that. But you can see what happens. This material just degrades. Everything just gets clogged up. Interim inspections. So those are your basics. That's the trim. Track out controls, signage, catch basin inserts, and trim. That's it. If you can keep those things in place and well maintained, your risks of discharge and any issues with us are really going to go down a lot. just concentrate on those items. So during our interim erosion control inspection, these are the things that our inspectors look at. As soon as we get out of the car, we're looking for that hotline sign. Is it posted? Is it still there? You've got to maintain that. Are there any signs of turbid flows or pollutant discharges? Is the catch basin insert maintained correctly? Is the stabilized exit maintained correctly? Are the perimeter controls still in place and functioning properly? Concrete washout has been a big issue lately. Do you have a facility for people to wash out into? Is site trash and debris, this goes back to the gross solids, so trash and debris on your site that gets blown off and enters the storm drain, we're concerned about that. Temporary stabilization this time of year, that's a perfect time for it. October 1st, when you expose soils, you have 2 days to get it going. So temporary stabilization is something you really got to keep up with this time of year. Stockpiles, are they protected? Has the erosion control plan logbook been maintained? And is the tree root protection zone still in place? We look for those. With the tree root protection zone, we don't enforce against that, but we've worked with the urban forestry. We will report that to them, and then we'll get a call if any of that's been. So these are really not like I said before, not like any other inspections. Typically with BDS, you're calling us to say, we want this looked at, we want this approved. For these 205s, this is really a compliance thing. This is for you guys, it provides education, it's for us to document our compliance with our permit. So it's not like building a structure. That's something that I think the community really is kind of struggling with. This is not like building a house. Once you put a 2x4 or a header in or a window in, it's there, it's done. That plumbing pipe's not going to move. With erosion and sediment control, it's completely different. Every time somebody comes on that site, things change. So with erosion and sediment control, site conditions and pollution concerns, they change with every vehicle, every new construction phase, and every type of trade. So you got guys out there putting metal plumbing in, metal shavings. That's one of the things that we have to look for in our APDPS permit. So metals in our waters, that's where this 205 comes in. We're looking at the actual activity. Before we're making sure at the 200, we're making sure you're ready for your activity. At the 205, we're looking at the specific activity that's going on while we're out there. So they're important tools for us to document compliance, document your compliance to show that there's an issue that you have these inspections and we thought everything was great. And it provides data for us to say what BMPs are working well. Just like the biobags, had we not been doing these 205s, we wouldn't know to say, hey, if you're in a bike lane, don't put that up. We also see a lot of BMPs that just don't work for you guys. And we can take that information and incorporate that back into our manual rewrites and our standards in the future. So it's a pretty important inspection for us. We hope the inspections are not seen as us coming in and harassing and popping in on people. They are an extremely helpful tool to keep you guys in compliance so that you don't get discharged. Because if a discharge happens, you will get, it makes it to a catch basin, BES enforces that, not us. Once that discharge occurs, you've impacted their system. So that, and they have very strict fines that you will not find over here with us. So it's an important tool. It helps keep you in compliance. You can receive educational information from our inspectors. Ideally, it's a proactive to stop violations and discharges from occurring, and we can issue just correction notices saying, hey, your silt fence doesn't look very good, get that up before it rains. That's the whole point. Erosion concerns hotline signs still posted. So there's been a lot of questions about if I've got rock on top of everything, why do I still need to have perimeter controls and inspect everything? This is exactly why. This was last year, just not a stock photo. This is here. You can see we've got a lot of rock here. This stuff is probably 6 or 7 inches deep, but we still have turbid discharge because just because rock is protecting the surface doesn't mean that every time a vehicle drives across it, it's going to pump that sediment, that turbid water right out. So stabilization does not guarantee a non-turbid discharge. Catch basin insert maintenance. Yeah, that's pretty interesting how we've got actual nematodes growing in there. It's been a while since maintenance. Track out control maintenance. If you start to see anything like this, all the little voids are getting filled in. See a big difference between that. Keep going the wrong way. Difference between that and that. That's when you want to, and that's when you need to maintain as soon as you start seeing that void space being filled in. So if you do have a track out incident, please do not wash the streets. Do not send somebody out with a pressure washer. Don't go out. this has actually occurred here. We said sweep and scrape and get all that dirt that you can off of there. They decided to be over the top and do a great job and washed everything down to a catch basin insert. So while we're waiting on this sheet that everybody has in the handout, everybody's clear. I mean, is it pretty simple? Does this sheet really give you the information you want? Because we're still going back and forth and we're looking at what do the contractors need, like your feedback. Just walks you through each inspection. We don't want any surprises when we come out. We don't want anybody to not know that we're going to be inspecting for trees and landscaping in the final.
How does it differ if we're working practice?
Well, every municipality and county will have their different regulations. They have their different manuals. And one thing that we would like to start doing, and we'll talk to our consultants about when we do the erosion control manual, is try to get our regulations as close to our neighboring, so that it does make it easier. You guys don't have to work with 15 different regulations. Like sediment fence is a good example. You can go across the street on 184th to Gresham, and they have a different standard from if you just walk across the street on the other side. So we don't want that to happen, but we need to actually address that. So, yes, sir.
Can you define per one of these two forms, I don't know which one right now, what ground disturbing activities are?
Yeah, the definition for ground disturbing activity is actually in Title 10. So ground disturbing activity is any mechanical disturbance of soil that could call it, well, that would expose us. So any mechanical disturbance that exposes. So pretty straightforward. Again, that ground disturbing activity thing, a lot of people will address that directly right now. A lot of people feel like if you're not actively digging, then you shouldn't have to have erosion control requirements in place. I know that's a couple people talked about that.
So
I think that what we presented here shows why, just because you don't have a piece of equipment digging up a piece of dirt, why those requirements would still be there.
So if the plumber's out there digging something to hook up his water line with a shovel, is that mechanical in your mind or not?
Well, if he's out there digging with a shovel, his only job is to go out there and dig up, if it's part of, and he has a discharge, it's still against your permit. There's nothing that exempts that. So whether it's ground disturbing activity mechanically or not, yeah, any activity, ground disturbing activity, any activity that exposes soil. So excuse me, I added mechanical activity. In our manual, it says any activity that exposes soil. So while they don't have a permit for that plumbing, PT doesn't have an erosion control inspection required. If they cause a discharge, it will be enforced by BDS as a discharge.
Okay.
Yeah, Kevin.
With concrete washouts, what's our expectation? Expecting eco pans, or can we just use kiddie pools, contract kiddie pools? Do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, our manual just states that it has to be in a designated area, designated facility. So if you want to use a kiddie pool, that works for you, great. I don't like kiddie pools, it's a waste stream product. We're here trying to be environmentally friendly, but if that's what works for you, fine. We've had some contractors build out of their scrap wood. They build a little wooden box and line that with 6 mil plastic. Great, that works for me. If you're not washing on top of the ground or in a curb and gutter, fine. Let's just keep that out of our soils. Let's keep it out of the right of way. That's what we want. So if you can comply with that, if you can dig a little hole in the backside or near your construction entrance, put some plastic in that, that's great. That'll work. The number one things, and we're going to go over here in a little bit, is that does not get stormwater in it. If we have a large rain event and you have an open concrete washout, those things will fill up, overflow, and you have the same problem, even though you're trying to fix it. So, anybody else? Things that we've covered up till now? Some questions? Yes, sir.
This 205 inspection, so that's something that you're required to call it one time?
No, you're not required to call those in.
We're not.
We are required to do those per our permit, but you're not required to call them. For you guys, it's really more of like a consultation. We can come out and talk to you about whatever. You can even use those, if you don't even want us to come out, you can call it a 205 and just leave a voicemail that says, hey, I just want to talk to you on the phone. And we can log that as a 205 in a consultation. So there we see two issues. We shouldn't have that high of concentration of water coming to one specific point at 7 minutes. That's the first issue. That needs to be spread out, not directed at that one point. And the other issue was that little hole in the mains. So that is definitely a discharge. That will definitely get sent over to DES for enforcement. So So just because the point is, just because you have your sediment fence in place, doesn't mean you're gonna have an okay discharge. It's not gonna make it clear, it's not a filtration, it doesn't provide any type of chemical flocculent. So just because sediment is in place, you really need to start thinking about things upstream. A lot of the times, the main question we get is, why can't I wash out my concrete on top of the ground, let it dry out, and then pick it up later? That goes completely against the whole meaning behind keeping this stuff off the top of the ground. If you can read that small enough, which I'm having a hard time, but it can run off the construction site to adjoining roads, enter roadways, storm drains, and discharge to surface waters. It's harmful to the healthful soil bacteria, so you got to think about concrete washout as a toxic slurry. Most concrete finishers will wear boots, they'll wear gloves. Imagine if that does that to the human skin, which is decently tough, what that does to our friendly bacteria and background vertebrates in the soil. Concrete washout water is a slurry containing toxic metals, has a pH of near 12. In comparison, Drano liquid is at 13.5. We've got an order of, order 10 between those pHs, so that's pretty gnarly stuff to get out there. High pH, since pH is measured in a logarithmic scale, a shift in 1 indicates a 10-fold increase. So we have some nice pictures of pumping, concrete pumps that do not deploy the correct DMPs, and this has been a little bit of an issue here. Providing some type of containment, just because you have a catch basin insert, you have concrete going to it, that's not acceptable. These don't treat pH, these don't treat for metals, they just collect sediment. And this picture on the next page is a quick and easy fix to that concrete pumping out the curb line. Strolled up on a site, they had an issue. They took care of this while we were on site. Rolled out some 6-mil plastic, a straw wattle that they had already underneath it, made a little berm around that, let that water build up. They pumped that water back into their side, into the excavation, not to the top of the ground. But there's a lot of simple fixes. We're not asking for anything to be engineered for something like that. You can take care of on site. But there are a lot of different types of DMPs available for concrete waste. One of the pictures here is a slurry material you throw into one of your facilities, and it actually soaks up all that water and allows it to harden a lot quicker. You can take that out and get rid of it. Back up and running. One of the things that a lot of people like are these out packs. They're sold at several places throughout town. They're full flat corrugated cardboard with the plastic that goes inside. You can keep these in your vehicle or in your job trailer and don't have to worry about an eco pan or anything taking up space. With a pour, you can pull those things out. Awesome. So, placement's important. Great job. Thank you for getting a concrete washout. No thanks for putting it within 10 feet of a catch basin. Anybody that comes by and pumps this, fills it, puts some more concrete in it, that's definitely not what we want. Keep these things away from the right of way as much as possible. Keep them away from catch basins. So, temporary stabilization. So between May 1st and September 30th, that's our dry season. Temporary erosion sediment control is concentrating on dust control, and you have to have it in place no more than 7 days after you disturb the ground. So keep that in mind. Wet season, October 1 through April 30. All denuded sites shall be provided with either temporary or permanent soil stabilization as soon as practicable, but in no case more than 2 days after ground disturbing activity. This is a lot more lenient than what most places have now. Most places have a daily cover requirement. You leave the site for the day, you provide straw or you provide cover there. So right now, we're actually a lot more lenient than what everybody else is using. Ground cover shall be installed on any portion of the site that's denuded more than 6 months. Temporary stabilization protects against splash erosion, helps maintain healthy soil biota. First line of defense against sediment transport, so that's our erosion control. We've been talking about sediment controls. It improves your worksite accessibility. Nothing worse than trying to work around a project where you're slushing through the mud. There's a lot of cool stuff we could do. I mean, that's not really in our manual that could provide a perfectly stable site, especially for these small, narrow sites that you guys are working on a lot. It just takes a little bit of effort working with engineers, and hopefully we get those back into the manual. So again, those same requirements, repeating myself a bit here. So the types of temporary stabilization, our manual allows mulching. Mulching can be compost, it can be wood chips, it can be bark dust, it can be anything that protects that soil from splash erosion. Matting and netting, these are great because you can roll them out. If you only need that for a little while, you can roll them back up and take them to your next side with you. The matting and netting can actually be left in place. You can topsoil on top of it, and you have a nice work area for the rest of the time. Temporary grasses, that's seeding with the quick growing erosion control grasses, and surface roughening, which surface roughening is extremely temporary. And if you're familiar with roughening, I'll show that in a second. So this is a pretty good application of straw. We still see some soil exposed, but they're trying to hit that 2-inch mark. Our manual actually lays out how thick this should be. We have a permanent and we have a splash control detail. So one of them will call for 2 inches, the next one will call for 3 to 4 inches. So 2 inches for straw. And it should be anchored in. That's one thing that this side is missing. You get that straw out there, take a little piece of machinery, punch it in. You want to get in contact with that soil so it's just not blowing away the next big wind we have. You know, that's one thing we don't like about straw. The other thing we don't like about straw is that you've got to get all that back off there. You know, whenever you're going to build something, you're going to have to get that off there. And it's just, I prefer compost for that reason. You can just quick till it back in. You have a healthier soil than when you started. Thinking further down the road instead of thinking now, just for now, is save you a lot of time and money. Temporary stabilization could be plastic. This is a slope failure that, but we do have the plastic on there. This is kind of an example of tracking or soil roughening, or actually cleaning out, but it gives us a good idea. This would be running up here. It just gives a little bit of compaction. The tracks give a little bit of place for the slow down the soil, the water as it runs down. So this is used a lot of times for temporary stockpiles. If you're working them actively every day, and it's in the dry season, you can just track those things vertically, not horizontally. We don't want to have tracks that are increasing the speed. So secure or protect stockpiles throughout the project. So all your stockpiles should be having plastic on top of them at the least. If that's what you want to use, you can use mulches, you can use straw as well. If you know they're going to be setting without being moved over the winter time, and maybe good to throw some erosion control seed mix on top of it. Stockpile placement, they tried. They were stockpiling. They really shouldn't be put out on concrete, but if you have to, this little berm of low base is not going to provide as much protection. But, so this is a good, very good. If you have nowhere else to put your soil, then you've got to put it on top of concrete or an impervious surface. They kind of treated this like our contaminated soil. They put down plastic underneath, put their soil on top, put their plastic on top, and then here, you see they use a 2x4 in that plastic to roll it up so that it doesn't blow away. That's one of the big complaints is, hey, my stuff's blowing away. If you can provide something at the bottom of that to roll in the plastic to keep it there. Also, on a larger application, the sandbags is what that's for. So all of our, this one doesn't show it, but this has sediment fins going all around the base of it. This is a very long-term stockpile. Trash and debris management. I mean, the public sees your sites. They drive by. This is, your sign is out there. We're building this site. And this is one thing I don't really understand why it's a struggle for us to have people keep clean sites. You're advertising that your company does this work and you do it in a certain manner. And to me, this doesn't advertise that at all. We are concerned with trash and debris because it is a floatable, it is a blowable. You can see whenever this drywall gets busted up and it's starting to get compacted down into the ground, we have issues there. So trash and debris management, just keep something on your site. Have people clean up every day. You've got to keep on top of your drywallers, everybody. This is actually in the excavation next to the foundation. We're not looking to have 100 years from now when that house gets demolished and we're going to have a site that's just full of contamination, full of you've got solvents and all kinds of stuff that go in those ditches. So talk to your framers, talk to everybody about not just throwing their trash down into the trench. We have no clue what this was. They didn't know what it was. It was a bunch of chemicals somebody washed out, left in the bucket uncovered. First rain that gets filled up, flows out to the right of way. This is a good view of that site. So trash containment. A lot of guys like to, again, with their scrap wood, with materials they already have, they build a small container, have everybody throw everything in there at the end of the day, that's perfectly fine. You know, if you can keep that stuff from blowing and secure it, that's all we're asking for. We're not asking that you have to rent a covered drop box or anything. So, no. So a lot of times we've had the question as, well, my 200 was approved, but at the 205, they came out, they said we need to add some stuff. The main thing is that erosion sediment control plans are living documents, and I think we've shown that throughout the process, you know, from before you start grading until the end of these projects, things change a lot. So that can require you to add controls or remove controls around. So just keep that in mind. It is a living document. It's not like a building set plan. Once you put that 2x4 there, it's there. It's not the same concept. In the erosion control industry, we use the term maximum extent practical. That means you are required to do the best you can that's practical to contain sediment and pollutants on your site. When we think about what it costs to keep those things in, if there is a cost, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a second, that could decimate an industry, make it impossible for them to do their work. And by impossible, I mean could not function. That is when the courts will step in and say, okay, these rules are too strict and it's not practical for people to follow these requirements. That's what we're looking at. But just saying, I can't send a guy out to grab some sediment pits over the next 3 days, not acceptable. So, this is examples of circumstances that could require changes in BMPs. BMPs have been shown to be ineffective if we allow you to do straw wattles, but we're getting more runoff and you're not maintaining them. We may say, hey, you're going to have to put in sediment. You got that much storage and you're obviously not maintaining. So grading and construction activity has redirected stormwater flows. Sometimes you've got to move those BMPs around as you grade, you move things around your site, especially with houses. That water that used to come straight through the project is now being pulled around. The engineer should be thinking about that ahead of time. With these simple site forms, it's really been put on you guys to do that. It's one thing I don't like about the form, but it is good. So, new pollutant generating activities have been started on site, and soil disturbances occurred outside of the existing DMPs. This is specifically talking about sediment fence at the edge of your property line, but then you come in and start staging and destroying the soil and the vegetation out of the planter strip. We may require you to add something to protect that soil disturbance. Revisions may be required if there's major issues on the site. We may say you have to come back, and for major problems, we may ask that a CPES or a registered engineer do that work. Inspections, and we're running over, so we're about to run over. Inspections is the big thing. This is our typical, this is what's been in code. This is our code that says you gotta be maintained a proper functioning order. You have to inspect them within 24 hours of a rain event. In our code, this is rain event of a 1/2 inch. During active ground disturbing activity, the responsible party is to inspect daily between October 1 and April 30, every day. Do an inspection, put that in your log. All inspections have to be put in log. So this is what is in place now. This is code. This is what we've come up with from our talks with the director and with DRAC. And this is our temporary alternate standard. And we're kind of proud of this. So what we looked at was really, is it feasible for a small builder? And whatever the definition of small builder is questionable. But if you have 10 sites and we're requiring you to inspect every one of those sites every day, is it feasible? This goes back to the maximum extent practical. Is it practical for somebody that has 1 or 2 crews to drive around and spend a whole week every day just driving back and forth to every one of those sites and inspecting? I get that. No, it can't be. There are companies that you can hire to do that work. But again, let's work with the community. Let's actually get something in place that works for everyone. So this is what we came up with. So nothing changes. During the summertime, we've lowered that threshold from a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch. This is based on some of those studies that occurred in the 1979 to 1983. It's proven that compaction occurs at 10 times the rate on a small site than it would on a large site. So 1/2 inch is really pushing for large sites, 1 acre, where you have a lot of room, you've got access roads. So we lowered that to 1/2 inch. And then during the wet season, this is the most important part, 24 hours following a 1/4 inch storm event, once every 7 days now, not every day. You're only required to inspect every one of your sites every 7 days. I think that's doable for everyone. I see no reason why this can be done. Now, please make sure everything gets logged, that's where our new, and all that information gets put into a logbook. If there's a problem on the site, we're gonna come and ask you for your logbook. So, this is really the construction community's time to shine. You asked, you came to us and said, we need something that's changing this, we can't do this. This is a temporary, we're gonna let this go, we're gonna collect data on how well it's working. Does it increase compliance? Because we have to prove to EPA, if we're lessening this requirement, that it's actually not causing degradation. So we have a duty to show that in our permit. So over the next year, while we're rewriting our regulations and we're rewriting our erosion control manual, we're gonna be collecting that information. So we're gonna ask you for your logbook when we come out on site. During the 205 inspection, we're gonna tell you at the 200, we're gonna give you this new little check sheet that you can use for your logbook. And we're gonna say, hey, you need to do these. Here's the deal. When we come back for a 205, we're gonna ask to see it. We're not gonna do enforcement on that for this temporary period. If you haven't been doing it, we're gonna write it as a correction. We're collecting that as data. And what we're gonna do is at the end of that period, we're gonna see how many people, when we gave that allowance for that 7 days, how many people took that and actually tried to comply. You know, it's not a time where, oh, we're not enforcing it, we don't have to do it. If the construction community doesn't follow that, we'll roll that back to every day. You know, that's kind of the deal right now. I think that's a fair thing to do, but it is, it's in you guys, it's in the construction community's hands at this point. That covers all that. The erosion control logbook is good because number one, it provides a documented history of your maintenance and what you've done to comply. It's you telling us when we come up, we get a complaint, and you say, well, look, yeah, we had a little problem, but I wrote down in my logbook that there was some tracking, and we immediately sent a guy out to clean that up, and we swept. That's what we use that for. We say, okay, great. Thank you for taking care of that. Need a little bit more sweeping, but great. No problem. No violation. That is the number one thing. We've had instances where lawsuits have been, when flooding has occurred. Recently we had a flood event and they didn't have anything to show that they maintained their catch basin insert. That catch basin insert, like the other one we saw, may have caused that flooding to another property. So maintaining that information on your site, what you're doing is important for you, not just for us. If we come out and ask and show us what we need to see. It provides a record of maintenance and labor costs, very important for you in the future. You can see how many times do we have to fix that in some things. How many times do we have to go out and replace that? You can start using these to bid your contracts in the future and know with the certainty, close certainty, how many times you're going to have to maintain it. And it provides a place to keep track of corrections and your responses. That's really
Use web-based log with photos and we can update that every day.
Yeah.
Do we have to keep up?
No, this is just a tool for people that don't have that type of stuff. And we understand that there's a lot of different types of builders out there. We've accepted people just writing in spiral notebook what they do every day. This is just something that, you know, a lot of times when we send people out as project managers, we may send that laborer out and say, hey, go check the catch basin. This kind of tells everybody exactly what we would expect to be checked for every inspection. Yeah, so
we need to translate this exact information
No.
into our document.
now, if you have a logbook like that, or if you're using that time, then you can show that to us when we're on site. Or if you say, hey, I can email that to you tomorrow, great, I'm happy with that. So for your convenience, we have this handy dandy check sheet. It shows everything that should be inspected. On the back, it provides you an area to put your notes. Just remember, when you find something that is not ready for inspection, or not up to par, you write that down. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you write down within that 24 hours when you fixed it and how you fixed it. That's all we need. So, helpful tools, training, inspection checklists, photographs, site plans, weather reports. We're asking for the information on these weather events. We have Hydra rainfall network. If you put that into your phone, that gets you to a rain gauge that is close to your project site. So instead of, we know here in Portland, sometimes it'll rain ½ inch in North Portland, get nothing down here in Southwest. You want to use the news, that's fine, but you may be doing an inspection that you didn't have to do. So if you go to Hydra Rainfall Network, use that, it gets you very close to your neighborhood. If you have a site plan, this is how we like to see, you can make all those notes on a site plan. See, these guys are saying, we removed the silt fence on 10.5 because everything was stabilized, and we didn't need that there, or whatever. We had a temporary entrance here, but then we're going to be using this entrance. This is really good information for an inspector and for you guys to keep track of what's going on in your project. Yeah, tree root protection. Again, you left the site. You know, as soon as you walked away, your guy who you asked to just go clean up knocks that tree protection down and piles everything up. Same thing here. Your excavator. You had your silt fence in. Maybe it wasn't butted correctly, but the excavator comes out and dumps everything right next to your center of the fence, pops it apart, makes it unfunctional. That was why we were asking for that daily inspection. That was the meaning of that daily inspection, because things like this happen every day. And just because you are now only have to do it 7 days, that doesn't make that okay if there's a discharge. We just want to make that clear. Thank you guys for coming. If you need training, if you want to train your employees, we highly suggest getting people into some type of training class. International Erosion Control Association has online learning. Northwest Environmental Training Center has the CECL program that you can get into. That's pretty cheap. BioCert International is one of the main places we use. There's a certified stormwater inspector program that comes through town every once in a while, and then SciSec. And we didn't even make it to final. Are we going to continue? If anybody wants to stay, you're fine. I understand we're over the hour because of our problem, but we're just now getting to the final inspection piece. Ground disturbing activities are completed. Temporary BMPs have been removed. No sign of sediment in the right-of-way or adjacent properties or in the storm drain. This is what we were looking at on that final. All disturbed soils have been permanently stabilized, not temporary. Straw does not give you a final. So permanent stabilization. All trees and landscaping has been installed. We inspect for that. And preserved trees are still in place. We check for trees that if they show they weren't supposed to be cut down, we're checking to make sure they weren't cut down. So this is a bundled inspection. Don't be surprised if we say your erosion control is good, but your trees don't match your plan. That's why this has surprised people in the past. They say this is erosion control, but we do bundle this with us. It makes sense. It works for us. It works for the contractor. You don't have 3 extra inspectors coming out, one to check trees, one to check landscaping, one to check erosion control. Get it all under one. So tree planting 509, this kind of gets missed. If you do have 5 or more trees that are required on your site, you may be required to call in a 509. We'll check for that, but keep that in mind. If you can call that in, that would be great. So permanent measures, this is a nice commercial site downtown. It's a mixture of hardscape, plantings, everything in this place. So, permanent measures, we'll accept this if you have a site that we don't have to wait for this to grow. This is hydromulching. This is a really nice application. You notice we can't see any soil coming through there. It provides a quick blanket. This can be done in 1 day. And if you have this done on your project for grassed areas, good, done. Move along. So hydroseeding is pretty popular. Gets everything. That hydroseed has a tackifier, a mulch, a seed, and you can also have anything else thrown in it that you need: fertilizers, bacterias, mycorrhizae, mycelium, whatever you need for that. They can mix it in. This is a site that they decided this is what it looks like after you do a decent application. So, final inspection. Here's a nice show of existing landscaping, new landscaping. Ground cover plantings are really important. That's what keeps those soils bound together and protects the soil. For tree plantings on your sites, we ask that you leave the identification tags on all trees. We do those inspections, but we're not arborists. We're not tree experts. This is actually in code as of last year. 1160 says you must leave those tags on your trees, and this helps our inspectors identify and get this thing done. So we can go by, grab those tags. It says the type of tree and the size of the tree. We're good. So enforcement. We hope we never really talk about enforcement, but right now our main tool is correction notices. We come out, we see a problem, we're going to write you a correction notice for that the first time. Unless that problem is causing an active discharge, that may change things a little bit and move things forward. But your first correction notice is going to be for things like BMP maintenance, sediment removal, logbooks, whatever. We start the inspection piece after we tell you on that second failed. If you failed that second inspection, we're going to write on there, next time you fail this, you're getting a re-inspection. That's a $97 fee. And that timeline for these corrections, we start out with a reasonable timeline. We actually usually ask the contractor, hey, what's a reasonable time for you to get these things fixed? 5 days? Okay, we cannot give you more than 14 days. Code says no more than 14 days. So we work on that 14-day timeline. If you need 5 days to do that, we'll give you that 5 days, we'll do the inspection on that 6th day. If it's not done, there we go, that's where that inspection fee is. So, notices of violation, we will write those for discharges and pollutants. We also refer those over to BDS. Stop work orders is typically we don't issue these unless it's a work without permit. You're exceeding the limits of disturbance. So your permit says you can only do this area, and we look and you're way down inside the environmental zone, you're going to get a stop work order. Those do come with fees. Danger to the public, which would typically, if you've got shoring that's supposed to be in and you haven't done it, we start having a slough or a slide, we may issue a stop work order and say you can only work on these items. That's really what a stop work order is for. Saying stop what you're doing, concentrate on this one item, please. This is the most important thing you take care of. That's the way it is. Code allows us to issue civil penalties up to $1,000 per day per violation. Per violation is important, so you could have $5,000 from one visit. Voluntary compliance agreements. I like these a lot. We don't use them. I would love to start using them more. In the past, in other municipalities I've worked in, these VCAs can be used to say if you have maybe you just need to educate the people that are on your site, and maybe we can come to an agreement that you're going to make sure that all your employees are trained. That can take care of the violation. I like those ones. I like to use them more often. Summary abatement is if there's an emergency, that means we can come in and do the work and safely. So that's it. So we can start the QA. I'm sorry it went over, but hopefully everybody learned something and got some nice tools. And hopefully everybody's happy with some of the changes we made to accommodate the building community and to make common sense. I really want to encourage everybody to keep in touch with us, keep in touch with your inspector, because when we start this manual rewrite, when we start the title scene rewrite, we want input. If you know somebody on drag, make sure you're talking to that person on drag. Make sure you're telling us what is working for you. If you have ideas for something that would work, something you don't allow, let us know. I think that there's a lot of cool ideas out there that I've seen that can really reduce your maintenance costs and your maintenance requirement. But we just got to make sure those get in place. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Sorry about the technical difficulties, and that's it. Any questions?
I have a question. One of the things I get upset about is an inspector shows up, you got 3 sewers to do. They show up last Friday and wrote us up. Okay, we're not going to be done until we're finishing today. Another inspector comes by yesterday and writes me up, there's no changes. We had straw wattle put on the job.
Because this is site specific, can we please just talk about this outside of everybody else?
It says they're gonna, a new fee's gonna be assessed if it's not finished, or by next week. I've been building in this town for 30 years. Stop irritating.
Right. So, and we can
I
look
think
at what's
you're
happening.
You're trying to tell me you're working with it. Come on.
Yeah, so if he wrote you a correction notice on the 3rd time, I think that follows what we've said we're doing.
This is the second time.
Second
We're
time.
done.
So we've asked you to do something. And again, I would rather us talk about this aside instead of in front of everybody, because this is site specific. I would like to give everybody else a chance.
Everybody
to
else
talk
is gonna
about
have the same
it.
problem.
No, not everybody has that same problem. So, but we will look at this and talk to it before you leave. We'll actually look at, and typically when these things come up, we go back, when we take these inspections, we take our pictures, we do all of our documentation, we can go back to that, and we can look at what actually happened on your project. Maybe there is an issue there, and we can get that correct. So if you've got your forms there, just meet up with me and we can look at it after we're done. Yes, sir.
So I think you just ask for common sense, rather than coming out every day and hammering him. Just use some common sense. Okay, you're gonna be done here soon, so we'll give you a break. It would be nice if there could weave in some common sense into this policy. I realize it's black and white policy, but weave in some common sense into that.
Right.
First thing is why are you writing up something when we're in the middle of construction, digging dirt?
I would have to know what the
Finish
thing was.
our job, and then we can complete everything you want done on your list.
Right, and we need to look at that. We need to look at what it is that you're talking about specifically, because let us finish our job, we've heard that from, well, let us get in there and pour our forms, then we'll do the erosion control. Let us get in there and do this, then we'll do erosion control. That's not compliant. That is not what we're gonna allow, and we'll never allow that.
I'm not asking for anything special.
Yeah, so, and this is why we've gone through the 3 reinspection thing, because number 1, we're gonna give you a nice timeline the first time, and then we're gonna start shrinking that down. Because we have a requirement to make sure people are compliant.
No, the thing is, this timeline, you can't come there Friday afternoon and write up a half a dozen things and expect it to be done on Wednesday, the following week. And you show up on Thursday and we're still in the middle of digging sewers. Yeah, you got
So we get 7
Monday,
days
Tuesday,
for
Wednesday,
correction.
and we're not done.
Okay, and what was the correction? I mean, if you want to talk about what was the correction?
Corrections were, it just said nothing's changed.
What was the original correction for me? What are you talking about? What's the issue? That's what we really need to get to. Can I see those reports?
Sure, sweep the sidewalks was the first one, and then we were in the process of tearing the sidewalks out.
Mhm.
You want me to do, sweep them as we're throwing them in the
Okay,
truck?
so the corrections that were listed were you didn't have a hotline sign posted. It needs to be visible from the right of way.
Right.
That's number one. So a reasonable time to get a carbon copy.
I got that up, I got that up.
So that's reasonable. Reinstall your perimeter controls, particularly along the right of way. Number 3 was perform maintenance on your catch basin insert. That's
It
a
was done.
reasonable timeline.
It was done.
Okay. Make corrections, and we'll follow up. Sweep the right of way. That's pretty reasonable and
And
reasonable
that's,
timeline.
and the right of way was swept everywhere but where they were putting the sewers in.
Okay, so, but where they were putting sewers in,
And
did
they
you
didn't
provide
have
a
the straw wattles, but they had them all sitting there ready to go when they got done. And they're in, you know, that was yesterday, today, all that. And then I did another correction yesterday. This, you know, taking pictures and says, nothing's been done. Well, it had been done.
Okay, so let's look at that one.
I'm tired of this crap.
All right. This is the same project, so we have one on Chautauqua, one on Willis. That's not the same project.
All 3 of them
Yeah,
together.
they're all five
Okay.
together.
5 of them, all together.
Yeah, so we've stated that there was no change from the previous inspection. The minimum BMPs were in place. Improve the sediment fence,
The sediment
bottles may
thing
need
was
to be
in
used.
there.
Catch basin insert still needed to be done.
No, it didn't.
Erosion concerns hotline sign with the permit number. So apparently the permit number
Catch
wasn't
basin
listed.
was in.
Maintain and use a maintenance log, those types of things, so. I mean, again, we would really, to do this correctly, we need to go back and look at our inspector's documentation that shows the pictures of what they looked at. That's why we require them to take pictures of every county seat.
I was on the site yesterday when the inspector showed up, and I said, why are you here? Why don't you let us finish our job? And I guess I wouldn't be so irritated that when it says on there, he's come twice when he shouldn't have been there. And then threatens to fine me if it's not done by Tuesday.
And by shouldn't have been there, what do you mean by that?
Well, we're under construction.
Which is exactly why these requirements are in place. You have to comply
Well,
with
okay,
these
well,
while you're
that's
under
what I mean by
construction.
he shouldn't have been there. He's writing up stuff when we're still working in the right of way.
Right, and working in the right of way does not,
18-foot ditch.
does not allow
What do you want?
discharges. If just because that's what the best management
I'm all
practice
about
is.
following the compliance and doing everything, but I'm not about having somebody come out and harass me when we really weren't done with the things we were doing and get everything
Yeah, if you're making a
cleaned
good
up.
faith effort, that's the question for the inspector. Are they making a good faith effort
I've
to
always
do
worked
everything
hard
they
at keeping
can
my job
to
sites
do it?
clean.
So
Yeah,
give the
so
guy a break.
again,
He's doing
good
a
faith
good effort.
effort.
If he's not, if he's being a jerk, then with the guys
Jeremy, I think
not
what Mark's
following the
saying
rules.
is the excavator was busy digging the ditch, okay? And of course, when you dig a ditch and you load the stuff in the truck, you get a little spillage in the, you know, when it's being loaded and stuff like that. And he was writing him up for stuff while he's in the middle of construction. Mark's not talking about they put the sewer in on Monday and here it is Wednesday or Thursday of next week, they haven't done anything. He's talking about somebody writing him up while they're actually out there
And
digging
he
the
put it
ditch.
down that we didn't do
From what I
stuff
read on
in
that
the
inspection report, we asked that a catch basin insert be maintained and installed properly. You come back 7 days.
It had just been put in.
So-
It was in.
Okay,
When
and
he
that's why we
said
need to look at these
yesterday-
pictures. And we can sit and argue about this, and that's really not what we should be doing. We should be trying to find out what is the actual issue. And we can do that. We need to pull the inspection reports. We have our documentation. We do this for a reason. And again, sometimes on these inspection reports, we'll note sweep right away, because at the end of the day, you need to do it. If we see that as inspectors, we have a duty to write down that you set in the right away, and that needs to be swept. If you're not asking you to do that right away, we're asking you to do that by end of day.
I think a lot
So
of
if
it-
we need to clarify that on our inspection reports, and we need to tell our inspectors, you know, make sure that we talked about this, make sure if it's a note that you're saying this is not a correction, this is just we're telling you need to have this done by the end of the day, that may be what we need to do.
Problem
We may
is,
need
if I
to
don't
clarify.
whine about it, what you see is what's on his paperwork, and you don't get to see the site, and you don't get to
Actually,
see, nobody
that's
calls
why
me
we
and talks
take
to me.
pictures. That's
They
why
just
we-
write it down, and you take what's here for gospel, and it wasn't.
We
So,
take the photos, and that's what we use as our document.
He says the catch liner basement, liner was, and it was, both ends of the street.
And we-
One on Fowler, one on Chautauqua.
And this didn't, I mean, again, we look at those pictures. When they look at it as a catch basin insert, they take a picture of it. That's our documentation, that's why we do it. If there's any issues, a picture's not there, then, okay. But, yeah.
Okay, all right. we're done.
So yeah, we'll work on our end, we're gonna work on making sure that when we say something needs to be swept, that we're clarifying that it needs to be swept by the end of the day. You know, it's those little things that make the difference. If you, exactly like this, we're not saying he dig that out, sweep it up right now, like have it right out. You shouldn't be getting sediment right away, even if you're loading out. That's not, it doesn't say no sediment right away unless you're loading out. First flush rains, that's why we don't, that's why you can't get it the right way in the first place. When you sweep that, have you ever seen somebody sweep a street and be perfectly clean? No, all that stuff gets stuck in the asphalt, gets stuck in concrete. During the first flush rain event, that becomes a turbid discharge and gets it down to the catch basin. That's what we're trying to stop. If we need to come up with a detail that says, you know, for geotextile fabric, for when you're loading out, put that down so that when you're done loading, you can roll that back up and get rid of it, maybe that's what we need to do. But again, it's us working together to figure out, is it a wording issue? Is it a DEP issue? Is it an actual real world issue that we need to take into account? That's what we need.
You know, the issue that Mark's bringing up is they're working out in the right of way. I've got 3 sewers right now. We're doing taps in side by side by side. Okay, when you're out in the middle of the street digging an 18-foot ditch to put a sewer line in, I hate to tell you, but you're going to have a little stuff there during the day. So yes, when you get done, you sweep it up at the end of the day. That's all Mark's really getting at.
Yeah, and our code
To
says.
be excited when somebody's in the middle of doing that process.
And the other thing, the only thing they hadn't been put down was the straw wattle. The liners were put in the catch basins where he wanted them. And he took pictures and watched, and then he puts on there, nothing changed.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry, but I didn't know I had to walk behind him taking pictures to show that it had.
Well, that goes back to the logbook, that's the importance, because if you had taken those photos and done a logbook of your maintenance and actually had that information there, you could have said, look, I had this in on Friday, after we left, we swept, I took a picture of it, I have that written in my logbook, and we have that documentation to show that that's exactly what we're saying.
This is all new stuff, this logbook, I wasn't aware that I had to put one of those signs on every house. When we have
And
3
we-
houses in a row.
That's why we're
always
having
posted
this,
one
that's
side.
exactly why we're having this event, because it has been a long time since erosion control requirements were properly, so we're properly inspected and everything. So we're having this event, we're making these changes because of these. That's why we're doing more education than we are enforcement. We haven't issued.
Jeremy, I guess what Bob was trying to get at, yes, I know that we probably all have a lot to learn about this new, or the process. But when somebody comes on the job and they see that you're working, maybe, you know, I go, well, maybe I ought to come back tomorrow and see what's at order. If he sees the builder, like, hey, Mark, when are you gonna be done with this? We'll have this looking like, you know, give me 2 days and we'll have it looking sweet.
Right, but the difference is, exactly, so if there's sediment fence that needs to be fixed, and you say, give me 2 days, I'll have that done. If we can give that 2 days without being concerned about a discharge happening, we give that. We give up 5 days, 7 days. But whenever it is something about sediment in the right of way, we're going to know, sweep the street. We're not saying you have to do it.
I know him and I use a lot of the same contractors, and they're darn good about that type of thing, sweeping the street, and we want that. But I guess what really got me going was when this guy wrote no changes, and if it wasn't done by Tuesday, which is going to be tough to do, but if it wasn't done by Tuesday, then there's going to be I don't know how he worded it.
So reinspection.
he's going to reinspection fee.
Yeah.
So that means they shut down the job,
No,
you know?
we don't issue a stop work order. A reinspection fee at that point, one reason, just like I said with the stop work orders, the reinspection fee is saying, look, we've come out here 3 times, we've tried to educate you, we've asked you to do these things. We are not getting a response, so maybe our inspection needs to occur before other inspections.
I could see that if a guy just blatantly said, get spun, get out of here, and I'm not gonna do it, that's not it.
And I review everything that comes through for a reinspection fee, that comes through the senior inspector before those get issued. So, if there's a problem with the site, I've got my cards back there. If you've got a reinspection fee notice that says, hey, if you fell again, call me. We can look at those pictures, we'll do it on the phone, we'll say, and I can identify what it is that may be causing that. It may not be the sweeping, it may be because of the insert, maybe because of sediment. We can do that together on the phone. That's why I'm here in the office most of the time now, is to provide that type of service. But yeah, so get my card. We encourage everybody to do that. So communication takes care of a lot of frustration. If you just keep that in mind.
Thanks.
Yeah, just want to say that there's a lot of examples of large commercial sites, and then there's small residential sites. I just asked that what you're requesting for a large commercial site might be different than a homeowner site, and you have to understand that it's 2 different processes and have a different eye when you're looking at what's reasonable for a large commercial site to do versus what a residential site and what that's reasonable.
Right, which is exactly why we allow things like the matting on a small site.
Yeah.
We allow things like 1.5-inch rock on a small site versus what we require daily inspections on a large commercial site. We're not requiring that for these small sites. We try to tell people all the time when we see silt fence being put in, say, hey, and maybe especially on a flat site, this straw wattle may be better for you. But that's up to everybody else to communicate back and forth. And when you start off a project, before you do a 200 inspection, you're free to call us and say, hey, is this a good application where I could just use a curb attenuation instead of having to put in a sediment fence? It's just that part of it that we need to work on. And everybody's been used to, for the past 15 years, a different inspector who doesn't really care about erosion control and just saying, yeah, whatever, just take, here's your approval, pour your concrete. That's the pains, the growing pains that we're going through right now. And it's just going to take us all deciding that we're working as a team and everybody understanding that our job is to make sure this city is in compliance and that
That's
you
what you
guys
said, working as a team.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep, and that's why we're here. That's why we do
Exactly
this. So that's why we've made these
Better
changes.
makes it
So, anyway. Anybody else? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming.
Change my mind.